Are you seriously calling the cops on my mailbox? That's what came out of my mouth, but even I couldn't believe the sight in front of me. Karen Whitfield stood at the curb, neon vest blazing, jabbing her clipboard at the little black box on a wooden post like it was a loaded weapon. And next to her, two actual officers, their hands hovering near their belts, looking just as confused as I was. All this, over a mailbox. Karen's voice went shrill enough to make the neighbors' dogs bark. This structure is unapproved. It lowers property values, it violates HOA standards. I wanted to laugh, but my blood was boiling too hard. Because she wasn't just talking to me, she was shouting at my wife. My wife, who had just stepped onto the porch in her navy blue jacket, shoulders squared, calm as stone. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She simply flipped open a leather badge and let the gold glint in the afternoon sun. "Ma'am," she said evenly, "I am the postmaster of this district. Every mailbox here answers to me. Not you." Karen froze. The cops froze. The whole street froze. Tell me in the comments, have you ever seen someone lose it over something this petty? And while you're at it, let me know where in the world you're watching from right now. The day we first saw the house, Linda grabbed my hand so tight I thought she'd never let go. "Jack, this is it," she whispered, her eyes sweeping across the quiet cul-de-sac. Kids rode bikes in lazy circles, sprinklers ticked in the distance, and golden light spilled across tidy lawns. It looked like the kind of place where trouble didn't exist. I chuckled, leaning against the for sale sign. "You've said that about the last 3 houses. This feels different," she insisted. "Safe, peaceful, a place where the grandkids can grow up without worry." That word safe hit me harder than I let on. After decades working construction, my knees were worn and my back carried every hour of overtime I'd ever put in. All I wanted now was quiet evenings, barbecues on weekends, and mornings on the porch with a cup of coffee. A place to finally breathe. Our daughter Claire, already climbing the ranks at the sheriff's office, walked beside us with a grin. "Plenty of room here, Dad. Driveway's big enough for your truck, a boat, maybe even a workshop." She wasn't wrong. The house wasn't flashy, but it had everything we'd dreamed of: a sturdy deck, a small backyard edged with maples, and a basement just waiting to be filled with family laughter. When we signed the papers 2 weeks later, Linda cried tears of joy. She planted flowers along the walkway the first weekend. Neighbors waved as they strolled by. One even dropped off brownies with a note that said, "Welcome to Brookstone Estates." For a while it was perfect, too perfect. The realtor had called it a very desirable community, run smoothly by the homeowners association. We barely paid attention. A few rules about trash cans and paint colors didn't sound like a big deal. After all, how bad could it be? I told myself we'd found the home we'd been chasing our whole lives, but standing there on that sunny porch with Linda's hand in mine and the grandkids laughing in the yard, I had no idea the peace we were celebrating was already doomed. Because one woman, wearing a neon vest and clutching a clipboard, was about to turn that dream into war. The first time it happened, I thought maybe it was some kind of joke. I just finished mowing the lawn and was coiling up the hose when I heard the hum of a small engine. It wasn't a car, it was slower, sharper, like an oversized insect buzzing toward me. I turned, wiping sweat from my forehead, and saw it. A black golf cart rolling down the street, yellow beacon flashing on top like it was an emergency vehicle. At the wheel sat Karen Whitfield, neon vest, mirrored sunglasses, clipboard already in her lap. She pulled up crooked in front of my yard, blocking half the road, and marched toward me like she owned the place. "Mr. Carter," she barked. No hello, no smile, just my last name, like she was a drill sergeant. "Yes," I said slowly, still holding the hose. She jabbed her clipboard toward the mailbox planted at the edge of the curb. "This mailbox is in violation of Brookstone Estates standards." I blinked at her. "It's a mailbox." "Unapproved design," she snapped. Section 4, Article 7. Mailboxes must match the community standard, bronze color, HOA approved post, height 42 inches exactly. Yours is black, mounted at 48 inches and therefore non-compliant. I stared at her, then at the mailbox. Black metal, simple red flag, standing firm on a pressure-treated wooden post I'd cemented myself. Perfectly legal. Perfectly fine. "That's the same mailbox I had at my old house," I said carefully. "It meets USPS regulations, height, placement, everything." My wife, she cut me off, waving her clipboard. "This is not about the USPS, this is about property values. The HOA decides the standard, and the HOA has decided yours is unacceptable." I felt my jaw tighten. Behind me, the screen door creaked open and Linda stepped out, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Karen, surely this is a misunderstanding, Linda said, trying to sound neighborly. That mailbox is new, sturdy, and perfectly safe. Karen's lips thinned into a hard line. Rules are rules. You'll receive a notice of violation. $50 fine, payable within 10 business days. With that, she spun on her heel, climbed back into her golf cart, and drove off. The yellow beacon blinked away down the street like a warning light. I stood there with the hose dripping onto the driveway, trying to process what had just happened. A fine for a mailbox. Linda shook her head. Ignore it. She's bluffing. But the next morning, it wasn't a bluff. Taped right to the front of the mailbox, of course, was a crisp white sheet. Notice of violation. Brookstone Estates, H. Infraction, non-compliant mailbox. Fine. At the bottom, signed in neat, sharp handwriting, President Karen Whitfield. I yanked it free and crumpled it in my fist. When Linda saw my face, she sighed. Jack, it's not worth your blood pressure. Not worth my blood pressure? Linda, this is federal property she's talking about. Mailboxes aren't her business. They're the government's business. Linda touched my arm gently. She'll get tired of it. Don't give her the satisfaction. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But something about the smug way she delivered that first notice, the way she drove off like she'd won, gnawed at me. That evening when Claire stopped by after her shift, I showed her the crumpled paper. She read it once, then again her brow furrowed. This is signed by her? Claire asked. Yeah, she even cited her own bylaws. Claire tapped the signature. Dad, do you realize what this means? What? She's trying to enforce rules on a mailbox. That's not just overstepping. That's federal interference. I chuckled, but there wasn't any humor in it. You're saying my $50 fine is a federal crime? Claire leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. I'm saying if she keeps pushing this, she's walking into territory where the HOA has no power, and if she doesn't realize it yet, she will soon. Her tone was calm, but her eyes were sharp. That look she got when she was solving a case. I stared at the crumpled paper again. $50 wasn't the issue. It was the principle. A woman with a clipboard thought she could rewrite the law with her pen. Linda tried to change the subject. It's just one notice. If we let it go, maybe it ends here. But deep down, I knew better. People like Karen didn't stop at one. People like Karen tasted power and came back for more. The next morning, as I walked to the end of the driveway to grab the paper, I noticed movement behind curtains. Neighbors were watching. Some looked sympathetic, others avoided eye contact. And right there, on Miss Harris's mailbox, 2 houses down, I saw another white paper taped just the same. I tore mine down and walked back to the house, jaw tight. This isn't ending, I muttered. Linda frowned. What do you mean? I slapped the crumpled notice onto the kitchen counter. It's starting. The second notice came only 3 days later. I found it taped to the same spot as before, fluttering in the morning breeze. Same neat handwriting, same signature, but this time the violation was different. Mailbox height exceeds community standard. Correction required immediately. Fine. I crouched down and measured the thing myself. 48 inches, just like the USPS guide required. Nothing unsafe, nothing unusual. But according to Karen, that extra 6 inches above her so-called community standard was a threat to property values. I carried the paper inside and slapped it on the kitchen counter. Linda frowned as she read it. She's doubling the fine? Yeah, I muttered. For 6 inches of post. Linda rubbed her temples. Jack, she's fishing for a fight. Maybe she was, and maybe part of me wanted to give her one. The third notice landed the following week. This one accused us of having the wrong color flag. I held it up in disbelief. Red. It's literally red. What color is it supposed to be? Linda snorted. She probably wants it bronze, like her garden gnomes. But Claire didn't laugh when she saw it later that night. She turned the paper over, studying it like it was evidence. Dad, these aren't just petty, they're patterned. She's documenting you. For what? Owning a mailbox? Claire tapped the signature line. For whatever case she thinks she's building. People like her don't write this many notices unless they're planning to use them. I shoved the paper into the growing pile on the counter, but Claire wasn't done. Start keeping them all. Don't throw anything away. Dates, times, even envelopes, if she mails them. Everything goes into a box. That's how the HOA files box was born. By the end of the month, it was already half full. Notices for the mailbox, notices for the driveway, notices for excessive grass clippings, and then came the one that nearly made me throw the whole thing in her face. Unfireized obstruction, mail truck blocking roadway. Fine. I stared at the words in disbelief. My wife's official postal vehicle, parked for 7 minutes while she delivered mail. Linda gasped when I read it aloud. She's accusing your wife of breaking the law doing her job? Claire's jaw tightened. That's harassment, flat out. But Karen wasn't done, not even close. One evening I stepped out to fetch the mail and froze. Karen was standing across the street, camera in hand, snapping photos of my wife as she slid letters into our neighbor's box. "Hey," I barked, storming down the driveway. "What do you think you're doing?" She lowered the camera just enough to smirk. "Documenting trespassing. HOA bylaws prohibit non-residents from tampering with mail receptacles." "Non-resident?" My blood boiled. "That's my wife. She delivers mail for the entire district." Karen's sunglasses glinted. "Not with that attitude, she doesn't." I took a step forward, fists clenched, but Linda's voice pulled me back. "Jack, don't give her the satisfaction." Karen snapped one more picture and strutted back to her golf cart, beacon flashing as she puttered away like she was on patrol. That night, I slipped the photo notice into the file box, my hands shaking. "She's targeting your job now," I told my wife. Linda sat down beside me, her face pale. "Jack, if she's willing to accuse a federal employee of trespassing, what's next?" Claire answered before I could. "Next, she'll drag neighbors into it." She was right. The whispers started within a week. At the mailbox one morning, Tom Henderson leaned close. "She fined me too," he muttered. "Said my post was leaning 3 degrees off center. $100. I shook my head. "That's ridiculous." "You think I don't know that?" But she taped the notice right on the box for everyone to see. My wife's mortified. Later that day, Mrs. Harris, the widow 2 doors down, stopped me as I watered the flowers. "Did Karen really fine you for your mailbox?" I nodded grimly. Her lips trembled. "She fined me too," said my mailbox. Flag squeaked too loud when I raised it. $50. I nearly dropped the hose. "A squeaky flag?" She shrugged helplessly. "I'm on a fixed income. I can't fight her." That evening at the kitchen table, I opened the file box and spread the notices out like cards in a losing hand. Linda sat across from me, her shoulders tight, while Claire flipped through each sheet, her face darkening with every page. "This isn't random," Claire said finally. "She's not just picking on you, she's building a pattern of control. And the more people stay quiet, the more power she gets." I leaned back, rubbing my temples. "So what do we do? Keep paying her fines?" Claire shook her head. "No, we document. We stack every lie, every fake citation, until the weight of it all crushes her." Linda reached over and touched my hand. "Jack, I wanted peace when we moved here. I didn't want a war." I looked at her tired eyes, then at the mountain of notices littering our table. "Neither did I whispered. "But Karen just declared one." That night I carried the file box down to the basement and set it on the workbench. I labeled it in thick black marker, HOA files. And as I stared at that box stuffed with threats and lies, one thing became clear. This wasn't just about a mailbox anymore. This was about power. And Karen Whitfield wasn't going to stop until someone forced her to. By the end of the second week, the file box was already bulging. Every time I opened the lid, it was like staring at a pile of insults. Notices about height, color, flags, even the way my wife's truck sat in front of our own house. Each one signed with that same smug signature, President Karen Whitfield. One night after dinner, I carried the box upstairs and dropped it onto the kitchen table with a thud. Linda looked up from drying dishes. Claire leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "I can't take this anymore," I muttered, yanking out the latest sheet. "Look at this mail truck blocking roadway. That's your vehicle, honey, the same one you've been driving for years without a single complaint." My wife's lips pressed into a thin line. She wiped her hands, sat down, and began sorting through the stack with the calm focus of a surgeon. "Jack," she said finally, tapping one notice with her finger, "do you know what this citation means legally?" I frowned. "That Karen's lost her mind?" She shook her head. "It means nothing. Absolutely nothing." I stared at her. "What do you mean, nothing?" "She's threatening lanes." Linda held up the paper, the overhead light glinting off her wedding band. "This is scrap. HOA bylaws don't apply to mailboxes. Period." I blinked. "How do you know that?" She stood, walked to the hall closet, and pulled down a heavy black binder. The thing looked like it belonged in a courtroom. She dropped it onto the table with a solid thump. "Because Jack," she said evenly, opening to a tab marked Postal Operations Manual. "I wrote the rules she's pretending to enforce." The air seemed to shift. Even Claire straightened, curiosity flashing in her eyes. Linda flipped through the pages with practiced ease, then tapped one section. "See this? Regulation 63.2.52, Mailbox Design, Construction and Placement shall be under the authority of the United States Postal Service. Not the HOA, not the county. not anyone else. Mailboxes fall under federal jurisdiction. I leaned over the binder. The words were plain as day. So you're telling me? Linda cut me off, voice steady. I'm not telling you. I'm showing you. Everything Karen has cited here, height, color, even where the truck parks, all governed by postal regulations. And I'm the postmaster for this district. I oversee compliance for every mailbox in 5 towns. Karen's notices aren't worth the paper they're printed on. I sat back, stunned. I'd always known my wife's job was important, but I'd never seen her like this, shoulders squared, voice sharp, authority radiating from her like a badge of honor. Claire smirked. Sounds like Karen picked the wrong mailbox. Linda closed the binder gently as though sealing the point. She picked the wrong family. She thinks she's protecting property values, but she's trespassing on federal ground. That's not just overreach, it's dangerous. The room went quiet. I rubbed the back of my neck. So what do? March over there with this manual and shove it in her face? Linda shook her head. No, that's what she wants. A shouting match, something she can twist into non-compliance. Then what? I asked. Her eyes locked on mine. Calm, unshakable. We build quietly. Every notice she tapes, every picture she takes, every threat she leaves, we keep it. Because the minute she crosses the line, this isn't an HOA squabble anymore. It's federal interference. And I'll be ready. Her words hit me harder than I expected. All this time I'd been stewing, pacing, letting Karen live rent-free in my head. Linda, meanwhile, had been preparing for war with the cool patience of someone who knew the law was already on her side. Claire leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. Mom's right. People like Karen don't stop when you ignore them. They escalate. And when they do, you have to be 10 steps ahead. Linda nodded. Karen doesn't realize it, but she's walking straight toward a cliff, and the ground under her feet is federal property. I looked at the file box again, the white papers stacked like a deck of rigged cards, each one a fresh insult. For weeks I'd thought Karen had the upper hand. Now for the first time, I saw the truth. She was poking a bear. And the bear was sitting right across from me, sipping tea and flipping through a manual she probably knew by heart. I couldn't help but chuckle, though there was no humor in it. She has no idea who she's messing with. Linda didn't smile. She closed the binder and set her hand on top of it like it was a gavel. If Karen keeps this up, she's not breaking HOA rules. She's breaking federal law, and that's a line you don't come back from. Claire's gaze sharpened. So the question isn't if she'll cross it, it's when. The three of us sat in silence, the weight of those words settling over the room. Outside, the faint whir of a golf cart echoed through the night, its yellow beacon flashing like a warning signal. I felt a chill run down my spine, because Linda was right. Karen wasn't just writing tickets anymore, she was writing her own downfall. The first time Linda mentioned Karen's name at work, I thought she was joking. She came home late, still in her uniform, a stack of district reports tucked under her arm. She dropped them on the kitchen table, rubbed her temples, and let out a long breath. Jack, she said quietly, you're not going to believe this. I looked up from my coffee. At this point I believe anything. What now? Another fine. She slid a sheet across the table. Official USPS letterhead, district stamp, typed complaint. My eyes scanned the words. Anonymous report, mailbox at 1120 Maple Court unsafe for delivery. Post unstable, risk of collapse, recommend removal. My jaw clenched. Unstable? That post sunk 2 feet into concrete. Linda nodded grimly. I know. The carrier who inspected it flagged the report as suspicious. When it crossed my desk, I recognized the handwriting in the attached photo submission. She pulled another paper from the folder. A blurry picture of our mailbox tilted at an angle that made it look like it was leaning. The caption scrawled underneath in block letters, unsafe structure. Linda tapped the note. That's Karen's writing. I'd stake my career on it. I slammed my fist against the table. She's filing fake complaints to the government now? Linda's eyes didn't waver. Yes. And that makes it federal. For a moment the room went silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I felt my pulse thudding in my ears. Fines taped to mailboxes were one thing, but forging safety complaints, that was criminal. Before I could say anything else, Claire walked in, still in uniform, her badge catching the kitchen light. She saw the papers and frowned. What's going on? Linda handed her the report. Claire read quickly, her jaw tightening with every line. By the time she finished, her voice was sharp. This isn't harassment anymore. This is fraud. False claims to a federal agency. I shoved my chair back, pacing the room. When is enough? Enough. She wants war? Fine. Linda raised a hand, calm but firm. Jack, that's exactly what she wants. You march over there shouting she calls the cops and suddenly, you're the aggressor. That's her game, don't play it. I gritted my teeth. So what, we just let her keep doing this? No, Linda said softly. We document, we wait, because the deeper she digs, the less chance she has of climbing out. I hated it. Every bone in my body wanted to fight back right then. But something in Linda's steady gaze pulled me back. She wasn't afraid, she was calculating, and I realized she'd already seen the end game. 2 weeks later, Karen escalated again. I came home from running errands and nearly swerved off the road. At the entrance of Brookstone Estates, bolted into the ground, stood a brand new mailbox cluster. Shiny bronze boxes, stacked 3 rows high, complete with a cheap plastic sign that read, HOA approved mail center, use required. I parked, heart pounding, and marched up to it. Keys dangling from a padlock, slots labeled with house numbers. Mine was there, etched in black marker like a threat. Neighbors were already gathered, whispering. Tom Henderson shook his head. She put it in this morning, claimed the HOA voted on it. Mrs. Harris clutched her purse. I never voted on anything, did you? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Nobody had seen a ballot, let alone a meeting. Karen appeared in her golf cart, beacon flashing like she was leading a parade. She climbed out, hands on her hips, sunglasses reflecting the afternoon sun. Attention residents, she announced, voice shrill but commanding. Effective immediately, all personal mailboxes are prohibited. You are to use the HOA-approved cluster for all deliveries. Annual maintenance fee, $200, payable to the association. I stared at her, stunned. You can't do this. Her smirk widened. I already have. Karen, these are federal mailboxes, I snapped, pointing to the cluster. You don't have the authority to install or regulate them. They're HOA property, she fired back. We make the rules. Pay the fee or lose delivery privileges. My hands shook with fury. That's extortion. Karen tilted her head. Call it what you want. If you don't comply, you won't get your mail. Simple as that. I wanted to lunge at her, tear that smirk right off her face. But before I could move, Linda's voice rang out behind me, calm, cold. Actually, she said, stepping forward in her navy jacket, tampering with mailboxes is a federal crime, punishable by fines up to $250,000 and prison time. The crowd gasped. Karen blinked, thrown off for just a second, but then her face twisted into a sneer. You don't scare me, Linda. This community answers to me, not Washington. Linda's eyes narrowed. Keep telling yourself that. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the rustle of leaves and the distant bark of a dog. Neighbors exchanged uneasy glances. Some nodded at Linda, relief flickering across their faces. Others looked at Karen like they were seeing her for the first time. Karen climbed back into her cart, but not before jabbing a finger in my direction. This isn't over, you'll see. She sped off, beacon flashing defiantly. That night, our kitchen table looked like a war room. The fake complaint, the illegal cluster, the new fee notice Karen had slid under our door, all spread out like evidence. Claire paced, muttering under her breath. She's bold now, too bold. She thinks nobody can touch her. Linda sat calmly, sipping tea, flipping through her binder again. That's exactly what will bury her. The moment she demanded money from mail service, she crossed into federal territory. I slammed my palm on the table. Then let's call the inspectors tomorrow. Shut her down. Linda's gaze met mine, steady as ever. Not yet. We let her run her mouth a little longer. Every lie she tells, every dollar she demands, every fake rule she posts, she's tightening her own noose. I rubbed my face, exasperated. And what do we do in the meantime? Sit here while she digs up new ways to harass us? Linda leaned forward, her voice low but razor sharp. We watch. We record. And when she finally tips over the line, we bring the hammer down. Not HOA hammer, federal. Her certainty sent a chill through me. For weeks I'd felt like prey in Karen's game. But now I saw the truth. Karen wasn't hunting us, she was cornering herself. And Linda, calm as ever, was just waiting to deliver the blow. It happened on a Thursday evening, just as the sun dipped low and painted the cul-de-sac gold. I was raking leaves by the curb when the sound of sirens jolted me upright. For a split second, my stomach dropped. Then I saw them, 2 squad cars rolling into Brookstone, lights flashing, and behind them, like a queen leading her parade, came Karen in her golf cart, yellow beacon spinning. She pulled up so close to my driveway I thought she'd drive right into it. Leapt out, clipboard waving in one hand, phone still in the other. There, she shouted, jabbing her finger at my mailbox. That's the one. Illegal structure. Ongoing theft of mail. Arrest him." The officers exchanged confused glances. One of them, a young guy barely past 30, adjusted his belt. "Ma'am, this is about a mailbox?" "Yes," Karen shrieked. "This man and his wife are running an unauthorized postal operation in violation of HOA law. She's been tampering with mailboxes across the neighborhood. I have photos, I have records." She fumbled with her clipboard, shoving pages toward them. The officers scanned the papers, brows furrowing. It was obvious they weren't impressed. I set the rake down slowly, forcing calm into my voice. "Officers, may I speak?" One nodded. "My wife is the postmaster for this district. She oversees every mailbox you see here. Karen has no legal authority over them. None." Karen's sunglasses flashed as she whipped toward me. "Lies. I am the president of this community, duly elected. My word outranks his. This neighborhood answers to me." The officers shifted uncomfortably. They weren't sure what to make of it, and that's when the front door opened. Linda stepped out, not in jeans and a t-shirt this time, but in full uniform, navy jacket crisp, badge gleaming on her chest, official ID case in her hand. Her presence was calm, unshakable, like a dam holding back a flood. "Good evening, officers," she said evenly. "I am Linda Carter, postmaster of this district. Under federal law, every mailbox here falls under my jurisdiction. Not the HOA's, not hers." She opened the case, the badge glinting in the dying light. The younger officer blinked. "You're postmaster?" "Yes," Linda confirmed, "and I need you to understand something right now. Tampering with mailboxes, interfering with delivery, or demanding money for access is a federal offense, punishable by fines up to $250,000 and prison time." The words hung heavy in the air. Even the leaves seemed to stop rustling. Karen laughed, high and sharp, like glass breaking. "Oh please, do you think flashing a shiny badge scares me? I'm the president here. I write the rules. The HOA decides what stands and what falls. You don't outrank me." Linda didn't flinch. She didn't raise her voice. She simply folded the badge case shut and said, "The United States government outranks everyone." The officers exchanged another glance. The older one spoke carefully. "Ma'am," he said to Karen, "HOA bylaws don't override federal regulations." Karen's face twisted red. "They do here. This is my jurisdiction. My rules. These people are criminals. Arrest them." The younger officer cleared his throat. "With all respect, ma'am, a mailbox isn't your jurisdiction." Karen sputtered, clutching her clipboard like it was a shield. "You're all blind. She's trespassing in uniforms, running scams, lowering our values. This whole family is a disease in this community." I took a step forward, fists clenched at my sides. "Karen, stop. You're humiliating yourself." She spun toward me, eyes blazing. "Don't you dare. You think you can hide behind your wife's job? You think some postal nonsense makes you untouchable? I am the law here." Linda stepped down from the porch, her presence like steel. She positioned herself between Karen and me, her voice cold as stone. "Ma'am, one more word, and I will open a federal case file on you tonight. Everything you've done, the fake complaints, the illegal cluster boxes, the money you demanded, it all adds up to one thing: mail fraud. And that doesn't end with fines. That ends with handcuffs." The older officer shifted his weight. For the first time I saw a flicker of doubt in Karen's stance. But then, like always, she doubled down. "You can't touch me," she screamed, her voice echoing off the houses. "I'm the president of Brookstone Estates. I have immunity." Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains. Porch lights flicked on. The cul-de-sac felt like an audience at a theater, waiting to see which actor collapsed first. Linda tilted her head, almost pity in her eyes. "Presidents don't get immunity. Not here. Not anywhere." For a heartbeat, the street was silent. The only sound was Karen's ragged breathing and the faint hum of the police cruisers. Then, faint but growing louder, came another sound. Sirens. Distant at first, then swelling, filling the night air. Karen's head jerked toward the noise. Panic flickered across her face. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The officers turned, radios crackling. Backup was on the way. I glanced at Linda. Her face was calm, but her eyes told me everything. This was no longer a neighborhood spat. This was war. The kitchen table looked like a crime lab. Paper spread edge to edge. Violation notices, photos of the mailbox, copies of the fake cluster box fee sheet, and the fraudulent complaint Karen had filed with the USPS. My wife sat in the center, calm as a surgeon, binder open, pen in hand. "This isn't random anymore," she said, flipping a notice over and stapling it to an envelope. "It's a chain. and chains leave trails. Claire leaned against the counter, arms folded, her badge catching the light. We've got motive, we've got harassment, and now we've got fraud. Put it all together, Mom, and you've got a case file. Linda nodded. Not just a case file, a federal one. I rubbed my temples. So what happens next? We wait for her to put another sign in the street? Linda shook her head. No. We log every single move. Dates, times, details. Then we forward it to the Postal Inspection Service. That's the law enforcement branch of USPS. They don't just deal with stolen packages, they handle mail fraud, forged documents, tampering with delivery systems, and they take it very seriously. Nugget, most people don't realize USPS postal inspectors are federal agents with arrest powers, working cases from mail theft to fraud. They outrank HOA rules every time. That night, Linda started the process. She labeled manila folders, notices, complaints, cluster box, neighbor statements. Into each one she slipped documents, highlighting the dates in bright yellow. She stapled photos to reports, logged every piece in her own handwriting, then snapped digital copies with her work-issued phone. I watched her, amazed. For weeks I'd felt like we were drowning under Karen's harassment. But here was Linda, turning chaos into order. Every insult transformed into ammunition. Around 9 o'clock, Tom Henderson knocked on the door. He carried a folded paper in his hand and looked uneasy. Got another one, he muttered. He passed it over. Violation. Flagpole exceeds height regulation. Fine. I shook my head. She already fined you for that last month. Exactly, Tom said. She's doubling down. Same pole, same height. But now she's saying it's obstructing the aesthetic flow of the neighborhood. Linda scanned the sheet, then slid it into a folder marked Neighbor Evidence. Thank you, Tom. Would you be willing to give a written statement? Tom hesitated, then nodded. If it helps shut her down, yes. When he left, Linda jotted notes in her binder. Claire glanced at me. See? People are ready to talk. They've just been scared. Over the next few days, more neighbors came forward. Mrs. Harris whispered at the mailbox, eyes darting toward Karen's house. She threatened to fine me $100 for feeding stray cats. Said she'd report me for harboring vermin. I'm 72 years old. I just put out a dish of food. The Johnsons, a young couple, stopped by one evening. Their toddlers clung to their legs as they handed Linda a notice. She fined us for non-standard play equipment, Mr. Johnson said bitterly. It's a swing set from Walmart. Half the kids on the block have one. Linda added it to the growing stack. We'll need your statements too. Mrs. Johnson's eyes welled with tears. Please, we can't afford to move, but we can't live like this anymore. Bit by bit the dam cracked. What started as whispers turned into confessions, and every confession went into Linda's growing file. One evening as we sat surrounded by folders, I muttered, she thought she was burying us in paperwork. Instead, she's burying herself. Linda didn't look up. That's exactly what fraudsters do. They leave paper trails, and the trail always leads to the truth. Nugget. Fraud cases rarely collapse from lack of evidence. They collapse because there's too much evidence. Every fake fine, every forged signature, every complaint becomes another nail in the coffin. By the end of the week, Linda's binder was 3 inches thick. Tabs stuck out like teeth. On the cover, she wrote in bold letters, Case File, Whitfield H. I flipped through it one night, stunned by the detail. Dates lined up with photos, notes cross-referenced complaint letters, neighbors' statements sat neatly typed, ready for signatures. You could walk this into a courtroom tomorrow, I said softly. Linda met my eyes. That's the point. Claire leaned over the binder, smirking. Mom, you should have been a detective. Linda sipped her tea, calm as stone. Postmasters investigate more than you think. We've had cases of counterfeit stamps, stolen checks, even mail carriers bribed by scammers. Compared to that, a power-drunk HOA president is child's play. I let out a low whistle. You're saying she picked the wrong battlefield. Linda closed the binder with a snap. She picked the wrong war. That weekend, Linda sent the first package. Certified mail to the USPS Postal Inspection Service office in the city. Inside, copies of Karen's fake notices, the fraudulent complaint letter, and photos of the illegal cluster box. She logged the mailing like evidence, date-stamped and sealed. I watched her at the counter, steady as a judge. So this is it? You've started the investigation? She nodded. Officially, once it's in their hands, Karen's not just our problem anymore. She's on the federal radar. Claire leaned back in her chair, a small smile tugging at her lips. She wanted attention. She's about to get it. I exhaled, a mix of relief and dread. And what happens now? Linda's eyes sharpened. Now we keep collecting, Every move she makes is another page in the file, and when inspectors call her name, she'll have no escape. Her words chilled me more than any threat Karen had ever made, because for the first time I realized the storm wasn't building anymore. It had already begun. The community meeting was held in the clubhouse on a humid Tuesday evening. Folding chairs lined the carpet, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the smell of stale coffee drifting from the corner. By the time we arrived, the place was packed. Neighbors sat stiffly, some clutching copies of violation notices, others whispering nervously. At the front of the room stood Karen Whitfield, neon vest gleaming, clipboard stacked with papers. She beamed like a queen addressing her court. "Residents of Brookstone Estates," she declared, her voice sharp, "we are here to address ongoing violations of community standards. The Carter family has been conducting illegal mail operations, threatening our values and defying HOA authority. Tonight, justice will be served." Murmurs rippled through the room. I clenched my fists. Linda placed a steady hand on my arm. Karen flipped through her clipboard and pulled out several sheets of paper. "Here," she said dramatically, waving them in the air. "Documented offenses, mail fraud, unauthorized delivery, installation of non-standard equipment, each one punishable under HOA law. I demand immediate compliance." She slammed the papers onto the folding table, eyes glittering with triumph. "From this moment forward, the Carter mailbox is dissolved, and all residents are required to use the HOA-approved cluster. Anyone refusing will face fines and property seizure." The room went silent. I rose halfway from my chair, but Linda stood first. Calm, composed in her navy jacket, she walked to the front like she owned the floor. Without a word, she set down a heavy binder, her case file. The sound echoed through the room like a gavel. Karen's smile faltered. "And what exactly is this?" Linda opened the binder, flipping to the first tab. Her voice was even, but it carried through the clubhouse with quiet authority. "This," she said, "is the United States Postal Service Operations Manual. Section 63.2.524 states clearly that mailbox design, construction, and placement fall exclusively under federal jurisdiction." She turned the page, laying down the fraudulent complaint Karen had filed. "This is a false report submitted to USPS, signed in your handwriting." Gasps spread across the crowd. Linda flipped again, laying down photos of the illegal cluster box. "This is tampering with mail receptacles, a federal crime punishable by fines up to $250,000 and prison." Karen's face reddened. "Lies, fabrications, you're twisting my intentions. I was protecting property values." Linda's eyes didn't waver. She produced signed neighbor statements. Tom's, Mrs. Harris's, the Johnsons. She set them on the table one by one. "And these are witness accounts of your harassment, intimidation, and extortion." The neighbors nodded, voices rising in agreement. "She threatened me. She fined us twice for the same mailbox. She told me feeding cats was illegal." Karen's hands shook, but she lifted her clipboard like a shield. "I am the president of this association. My bylaws are supreme. You can't override them with federal nonsense." Linda leaned forward, her voice like steel. "Federal law overrides everything." The room froze. Then came the sound, the heavy thud of boots against carpet. The door swung open. Two men in dark suits stepped inside, badges flashing, U.S. Postal Inspectors. Behind them, sheriff's deputies followed, including Claire, her eyes locked on Karen. Karen staggered back. "What is this? Why are they here?" The lead inspector spoke calmly. "We've received multiple complaints of mail fraud, tampering with federal property, and harassment. Ms. Whitfield, you are under investigation." Karen's mouth dropped open. "You can't, this is my community, my authority." The inspector didn't blink. "Ma'am, you impersonated federal authority, installed unapproved equipment, and attempted to collect money under false pretenses. That's mail fraud. That's a felony." Claire stepped forward, voice steady. "Karen Whitfield, you're done." Neighbors gasped as the deputies moved in. Karen clutched her clipboard to her chest, wild-eyed. "No, you can't arrest me. I am the president. This is a misunderstanding." Linda remained calm, her arms folded. "No, Karen. This is justice." The inspector recited charges clearly: mail fraud, harassment, impersonating authority. The words struck like hammers. Karen thrashed as the deputies took her arms. "You'll regret this, all of you. You think you've won, but I'll be back. HOA rules are the law." Her voice cracked, desperation breaking through the arrogance. The clipboard slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the table. No one picked it up. As she was led toward the door, the neighbors sat frozen, stunned into silence. For weeks they had whispered in fear of Karen. Now they watched the same woman dragged out in handcuffs, her neon vest askew, her power gone. The inspector gathered Linda's binder, nodding in respect. "You did good work, Mrs. Carter. This will make prosecution straightforward." Linda gave a small nod. She wrote her own case file. I just collected it. I looked around the room. Neighbors met my eyes with gratitude, some with tears, others with shame for ever siding with Karen. The entire community seemed to exhale at once, as though chains had been cut loose. But I couldn't take my eyes off Karen as she disappeared through the doorway, her shouts echoing down the hall. For the first time, she realized her clipboard wasn't worth a stamp. The next morning, Brookstone felt like a different place. For the first time in months, I walked to the end of the driveway without bracing for another violation notice taped to the mailbox. The air felt lighter, freer, neighbors waved openly instead of peeking from behind curtains, and the only paper on the box was the Daily Mail, delivered by my wife, steady as always. 2 days later, a special meeting was called in the clubhouse. No neon vest this time, no clipboard, just the homeowners. Every seat filled, every face watching the front of the room. The HOA board sat stiffly at the table, but without Karen they looked like lost children. One of them cleared his throat. "With the president removed and under investigation, we need to decide how to move forward." The room buzzed. Voices rose, some angry, some hopeful. Then Tom Henderson stood. "We dissolve it. Enough is enough. We never wanted an HOA in the first place. Karen pushed this on us, and look where it led." Mrs. Harris, frail but firm, added, "We're neighbors, not enemies. We don't need fines and threats to live in peace." Hands shot up across the room, one after another. The vote was swift, unanimous. The Brookstone Estates Homeowners Association was dissolved on the spot. The relief was almost physical. People hugged, clapped, even laughed. For the first time, we weren't living under the shadow of a clipboard. We were living like a community. A few weeks later, a new committee formed. Not an HOA, not a group with the power to fine, just a handful of volunteers willing to coordinate block parties, arrange lawn services for elderly neighbors, and handle the things that really mattered. No threats, no fear, just neighbors helping neighbors. I stood on the porch that night watching kids draw chalk rainbows across the sidewalks, their laughter floating through the warm air. Linda sat beside me, sipping tea, her face calm and content. "You did it," I said softly. She glanced at me, brow raised. "We did." "No," I insisted. I spent weeks boiling with anger. Claire kept us grounded, sure. But you fought her with patience, with proof. You turned every weapon she threw into evidence. Linda smiled faintly. "I just did my job." I shook my head. "No, you did more. You showed everyone that truth doesn't shout, it stands." Her hand found mine, warm and steady. Later that week, neighbors stopped by with baked goods, thank you cards, even small gifts. The Johnson kids drew a crayon picture of Linda in her uniform, cape on her shoulders like a superhero. She pinned it to the fridge, tears shining in her eyes. Even Claire, tough as nails, wrapped her arms around her mother one night. "Mom, you taught me more about law and justice these past weeks than I learned in training. You showed me what strength looks like." Linda just kissed her forehead. "Strength is quiet, Claire. Noise fades. Truth does." The peace that settled over Brookstone was almost surreal. No more notices, no more golf cart patrols, just normal life. I watched as mail was delivered without harassment. Kids pedaled bikes in circles. Families barbecued without fear of a clipboard flashing over the fence. It was the life we dreamed of when we first saw the house. The life Karen had tried to choke out. One evening, as the sun set, I found myself at the mailbox, hand resting on its black metal frame. For months it had been a battlefield. Now it stood quietly, a symbol of victory. Claire walked up beside me, smiling. "Still standing." "Yep," I said, "still standing." Linda joined us, slipping her arm around my waist. For a long moment, the three of us just stood there, watching the street fill with life again. I thought back to the day Karen had first taped a notice here, her voice sharp, her eyes blazing with false authority. She had believed she owned this street, these people, even this mailbox. But now she was gone, and the neighborhood belonged to the people again. I looked at Linda, pride swelling in my chest. My wife, the quiet force who had stood steady through the storm. She hadn't needed to shout or threaten. She had simply let the truth speak louder than lies. And in the end, that's what set us free. Looking back now, it almost feels unreal. One woman, a neon vest, and a clipboard nearly tore a whole neighborhood apart. She believed HOA rules made her untouchable, that fear and fines gave her more authority than truth. But here's what I learned. HOA rules are not law. They are guidelines, sometimes useful, but never higher than real authority, and when someone tries to weaponize them, they crumble the second real law shows up. Karen thought she could scare us into submission. Notices on mailboxes, threats of lanes, shouting about property values like they were scripture. But intimidation only works if you don't know your rights. The moment my wife laid down that binder, it was over. Because truth doesn't need volume. It doesn't need threats. It just needs to stand firm. I used to think strength was in shouting louder than the other person. My wife showed me otherwise. Strength is in patience. It's in knowing the rules better than the bully. It's in standing steady until the storm breaks. One line she said still echoes in my head. The mailbox doesn't just deliver letters. It delivers the law. She was right. That little black box at the end of the driveway wasn't just metal and wood. It was a symbol. Federal authority. Truth. Protection. In the end, it was the very thing Karen couldn't control, no matter how many fines she taped to it. Now when I sit on the porch with Linda, coffee in hand, I don't just see a quiet street, I see a reminder. No matter how loud intimidation gets, it always collapses against the steady weight of the law. And maybe that's the moral here. Don't let anyone trick you into believing their clipboard is stronger than your rights. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to deal with a Karen or an HOA trying to push you around? And while you're there, let me know where in the world you're watching from. And don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe for more stories where truth wins and intimidation loses.